lay down or do something a little more calming. But this one, I guess, it's gonna be some interactions, so we're gonna do some things that are interactions to kind of keep you awake a little bit, and not let the food kick in too much, the nice desserts that we just had. I'm gonna start off by just telling you a little bit about myself. My name is Hope Gilchrist. I am the school counselor at Cristo Rey Jesuit High School. I've been there for 6 years. I do private practice work, and I do therapy with children, families, and adults. I do parent coaching and teacher coaching and things of that nature. I worked for Catholic Charities for 10 years before I went here, and I did a lot of family therapy and worked with kids who were had severely emotional disturbance. I worked with them in the homes, I worked with them in school, and I did a lot of school-based therapy at that time. So over the years of working with this population, working with students, working with people, working with teachers, I've realized that unfortunately we lose a lot of this thing called emotional intelligence, or we also don't know that we don't have it. So that's the other piece. So sometimes when I say emotional intelligence to people, they're like, what is that? Like, what are you gonna do with that? Emotional intelligence, where are we going with this? All right, so the question I have here is, are you emotionally intelligent? But what I'm gonna do, we're gonna start off with, you have a scenario in front of you. And before I go into all of the information, I want you guys to just this is kind of like your baseline. And I want you to read this scenario. And in the scenario, the first question says, was this situation handled properly? And I would like you to write down your thoughts on whether it's handled properly, and what you think about it in that moment. So we're gonna do that first. We're gonna take 2 minutes to do that. If somebody needs longer, we'll do a little bit longer. But we'll take a couple of minutes to do that, and then we'll go into what this thing called emotional intelligence really is and how it connects to who we are individually. Does everybody have one? I have 2 people maybe. Just tell me what your thoughts are. What do you think emotional intelligence is?
Maybe being perceptive to other people's sort of body language and potential feelings that are being expressed through that.
Okay, that's one half of it.
Ability to not only acknowledge or interpret, but resolve, support someone who is experiencing distress or a lowered emotional experience response.
Okay, all right. So that's also connected to it. But what commonly happens is we forget one major piece when we think about it. We see the empathetic piece, we see all of that, but what we leave out is ourselves. So, emotional intelligence or emotional quotient is the ability for individuals to recognize their own, so self, and other people's emotions, and to discriminate between the different feelings and label them appropriately and use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. So that part is often left out. We don't take into consideration what we bring to the table, what we're not bringing to the table. The automatic response is to give someone else something or respond to someone else in some way based off of their behaviors or something like that, but we don't take in it what we contribute to it. Emotional IQ versus academic IQ. I found this, and it says being emotionally intelligent is critical to success in school, workplace, and life in general, and may be more important than academic learning or technical expertise. Many people probably don't believe that, because most times when you're in school, you're focused on getting the work done. That is the goal. We got to get this work done, and that's the focus. But you can't really move to get work done if emotionally you're not together, if you don't have it all together. So there's like a puzzle that has to happen. You have to have your piece in order to get the other piece that you're looking for. Again, something that often lacks. and we don't check into to see if it's something that we can add to when we have kids who are just not doing well, or when we are not doing well, something is not gelling in the classroom. It's like, hey, well, I don't understand. Why can't they just get it? Why can't they just do it? But there's a piece that's missing, and that component can really be helpful to moving forward learning in the classroom. So there we are. So why is this important? When kids come to school, what do we expect they have? Some thoughts. What does being prepared mean coming to school?
Getting enough sleep.
Get enough sleep.
Having your books, your
Having-
homework.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Ready to learn.
Ready to learn. Okay. So if a kid doesn't have those things, the first thing we say is, where are your books? You're not prepared. You're not learning. You're not here to learn. You can't be. You don't have, how do you come to school and not have pencil? How do you come to school and you don't have paper? All of those things start to go on. So how often do we check in with ourselves? How do you know you came to school prepared? So some thoughts on when you get up in the morning, how do you know you're going to school prepared? What do you do?
Rush frantically around my house in 10 minutes.
Okay. What else? What are some other ways we know we're prepared for work that morning?
Have my laptop, my cell phone. Make sure I'm arriving with my toothbrush.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Just make sure everything works in the classroom, like whether it's like the projector or like you have everything prepared for the lesson.
Okay. So
And just a feel too, like just how you could have all the pieces in place, but you could still feel like you're not ready
correct.
internally.
No matter what, you still kind of like fishing, pulling. All right, and something just still doesn't feel right. But what we don't do is probably say, "Am I ready? Am I ready? Slow down. Let me take into consideration that I got to be ready mentally, physically, all of those things, ready to walk in the classroom. Because then when I encounter kids, I'm ready now to do the other portion of this emotional IQ, which is take on whatever they have going on. But if I'm not really ready, which again we think we're ready because we have PowerPoint ready to go, we have the lesson written on the board, the objective, so they come in, take a seat, but at this point we still don't know if we're ready, right? So we have to take some time to check in with ourselves. So we have to find what I call a different way of being smart. And that's what I think emotional intelligence is. It's a different way of being smart. So it's, yes, you can be academically smart, intelligent, IQ high, but if you have no emotional intelligence, then you can also fail. So it's this piece of trying to put it all together. So I found this, and it says, in navigating our lives, it's our fears and envies, our rages and depression, our worries, anxieties that steer us day to day. Even the academically brilliant among us are vulnerable to being undone by unruly emotions. The price we pay for emotional literacy is in failed marriages, troubled families, in stunned social and work lives, and deteriorating physical health and mental anguish as a society in tragedies such as killing. This is something that I think that we very rarely take into consideration. That just us being emotionally together, not having all those things, can cause all of these things to happen here. And most times people don't see them until after something's over or after something's happened, then there's a reflection that happens. So the self-reflection happens after the fact. The goal is to reflect before things happen. And so that we find hard to do. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about a couple of kids that I've worked with. And then I put a blank piece of paper, I gave everyone a blank piece of paper behind it. You can write it on your tablet afterwards. So first I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about a couple of kids that I've worked with. And a couple of people that just haven't been able to check themselves and check their emotional intelligence. I worked with this kid before, let's call him Larry. And he had a tough time in school. When I say a tough time, he is a kid who, if it was anybody's kid that you were going to put out your classroom, it was going to be Larry. if Larry was bored, Larry was gonna stand up in the chair in the middle of the classroom and just start doing things. But oftentimes, so what the first thing you do if you see a kid standing up or throwing things or flying off the things, you approach Larry, whatever. But what Larry's response was, is to go, he would just go crazy. He would just go off and then he start fighting and then people have to put their hands on him, all this. And it was like a cycle all the time. Every time Larry got in trouble, an adult would go near him, then Larry would inadvertently go off. We ended up learning when people take the time to step back. Why is Larry doing this? What's happening with Larry? Larry was in a residential facility before, and in the facility, because he was so hyper, because no one took the time to understand Larry's home life and all that situation, we were just worried about what should be functionally happening in this moment. The staff person that hung him outside the window, upside down by his feet, because he was too hyper. So in this moment, guess what Larry would do? Anytime an adult approached him, his defense mechanisms would go up, and there would be a physical struggle. So it had to be learned that if Larry's going on, give him space. Talk to him from a distance. Help him calm down. But again, that's someone taking the time to realize that there was a pattern of behavior happening. And instead of keep addressing the behavior, let's find out what's behind the behavior. And so that takes a little bit of self to say that I'm not going to focus on what somebody's doing, but I'm going to figure out what to do behind it. Another kid, he would do things, and he was always just wanting to help you. Great kid, always wanting to help. And as soon as you would say, well, you got number 5 wrong, he would run out of the classroom, or he would run under the desk, or you find him hiding under the teacher's desk, or you find him somewhere, and it's like, what is the problem? You only got 1 wrong. It can't be that bad. His backstory. His parents used to send him to the gas station to pump gas. You know how you see those kids sometimes at the gas station wanting to help you pump your gas, or I don't know what area you live in, but in Baltimore, that happens often. And they want to help you pump your gas and things like that. Well, he wasn't bringing home enough money. And when he didn't bring home enough money, his parents would let him have sex with others, let people have sex with him in order for the difference. That's Larry's story. So anytime Larry didn't do something the correct way, he felt like there was going to be a consequence that he couldn't handle. So he retreated. He would retreat every single time. So we had to work around that. But I also did tell you guys I work with severely emotional disturbance. So, but again, these are some of the kids that could potentially be in your class, because we just don't know. People come from different places and they experience different things. So we don't know. But you take the time and you get the information. And so I've worked with many kids who have backstories and who have these situations and things that are like, oh my, I didn't know. But we all automatically focus on their behaviors first. All right? Okay, so these are the stories of those few kids. So what I want you to do now, I'm going to give you 6 numbers. And I'm going to just have you just write them down. Okay? First number is 4. Well, 6 different things is what I'm going to give you. All right, first number, we'll just give you number 4. Second one, I want you to write the word tree. Write the word door. Write the word mine. The word look. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, this is me being emotionally intelligent. I just did this the whole wrong way. I was supposed to tell you guys this and get you to write it down afterwards, but I just did it the total wrong way, which defeated my whole purpose. And I'm thinking, what goes next here? That's not supposed to happen. So let's do this. We're going to start a new group of words. Okay? So don't write anything yet. Don't write anything. I'm going to tell you 6 words. Okay? That's what I'm going to do. We're going to do it the right way. All right. So the 6 words are ship. Don't write anything until I tell you to write them. Ship, dog, full, boat, wrong. Okay. Now I want you to write those words that I just gave you. All right. How many got all of those words that I just said right?
Can you say
You were able to
that?
remember them all? Ship was the first one. Dog was the second one. Fool was the third one. Body was the
No, you never said it already.
boat. I got it looking. Boat, and then wrong. So there's only 5. But everybody had. Did everybody get them all? Okay, it's okay if you didn't. It's okay if you didn't. All right. So let me ask you this question: how many people still, in some way, I'm thinking about the stories I just told you. Everybody's been able to. That's honest.
Why, I'm trying to put these words together to make sense.
Okay. All right. You said you're trying to put the words together to make sense. Okay. What about you?
I can't get those kids out of my head.
Okay. How many people can get the kids? Was able to move past the kids?
Until you asked. Yeah, I was focused on the tax.
Okay. So wait a minute. So how many people still had the kids? I want to just get a gist. How many people still had the kids on their mind? Okay. So we had 3 people who still had the kids on their mind, and then we had some people who were just like were able to just kind of move on and move forward. So an example, what I want to show you guys is how our kids are. So there are some kids, some people who can actually move forward and just keep going as if nothing's happening. But then there are those few that can't. That no matter what you do, no matter how often you move forward to a task, they still can't get past. So let's say that somebody who's coming in that morning and it just wasn't a good day. I just wasn't having a good morning, and those things were going on. So I can't move. So that again challenges us to step outside of ourselves and understand them, but also be in a good place for them. And how do you do that? So there are 4 different ways I would find of being smart. And those 4 ways of being smart, number 1 is self-awareness. Being able to recognize your own emotions as they happen and understand general tendencies for responding to different people and situations. What does that mean? Being able to connect your own feelings with your own thoughts. So if I'm feeling some way, I need to be able, and I'm thinking something, I need to understand that they're happening. While I'm working with other people, I need to be self-aware. I need to know what's happening with me. You need to also, part of this is also knowing your own triggers. So I've had people to say, I had a teacher and a student come to me one day, and the teacher said, here's Melanie. She said, you know, she is in my class, she is being so disrespectful to me, she's talking back and she's doing this, and the student's like, I'm not being disrespectful to you, you're being disrespectful to me. And so they're both going on, and I'm looking at the teacher and I'm thinking, what is wrong in this moment that you can't remove yourself to say, Melanie's has a problem being disrespectful. We don't know what Melanie's issue is right now, but you're doing the exact same thing she's doing. How about checking in with yourself to figure out, now clearly I'm not saying that this student is correct, but why am I standing here having a debate back and forth on who's being disrespectful? Because at this point we're both being disrespectful. We both have a problem. There's a problem. And so understanding, what is it in me that makes me feel like I have to go back and forth with Melanie? Why do I feel that way? Some people don't recognize their own triggers. Some people don't realize. I had a male staff say to me one time, every time when I was young, somebody smacked their teeth, my mom thought that was so disrespectful. And so we grew up that way. So in his classroom, anytime a kid smacked their teeth, he put them out and giving them a detention. And it's not that serious to somebody, but he didn't realize this is your own stuff. This isn't an issue with the kids smacking their teeth. This is your own stuff. So the ability to just kind of put how you feel, how you're thinking, and recognize that I need to be in control of this before I can go in a classroom and say, hey, Bobby keeps doing this, but we want it to be Bobby, and we want to figure out how to work with Bobby, but we got to make sure it's not us that's contributing to that. So, which goes into having some social awareness. Understanding where someone else is coming from, whether you agree or not agree. Hard to do sometimes, especially with students. Whether I agree that what the reason they did it, but just understanding that, hey, you know what? I get it. Now, do I think that that's the way you should have handled it? No. But then that's a conversation. And that's the ability to check in with yourself and not let someone else's behavior, someone else's thoughts control how you behave and control how you think. So you have to understand where somebody else is coming from. And I'm blanking on that saying, but basically seek not to be understood, but to understand. One of those, to understand first and then be understood. So it's basically to hear someone out, understand what they're saying, and then you can then somebody can hear you. But if both of you guys don't understand and you're not aware of that, then that's a big issue. So you need to take, that's a big thing to take into consideration. Self-management is coming. Using awareness of your own emotions to choose what to say and do in order to positively direct your behavior. Something that I recommend with self-management is to say to somebody who knows you well, because today's not my best day, and I do recognize that, but say, how am I coming off to you today? What do you think, because let's say today, I'm sure we've had all this where people have been in the classroom like, all day these kids have been getting on my nerve. And instead of saying, am I coming off in a bad way? Let me check me first. Because if I check me first, then maybe I'm the issue and not necessarily students. The hardest thing sometimes to do is recognize when it's you and when you have to do something different. Because we're so conditioned when we work with kids, we're in control, I'm in the power position, so you should be following and listening to me. That's true. But we also have to be able to check in with ourselves and know when we've had our moment and we're having a moment. And so saying to someone else, hey, you know what? This has been a rough day. Just take that and try that. Try somebody and somebody that cares about you enough to tell you the truth. Because some people will agree with you and be like, it's not true. These kids been driving me crazy too. And both of y'all having a bad day. The reality is both of y'all. So, the kids didn't get up on time this morning. You didn't, like you said, you rushed out the house, then you forgot your laptop, and then you had to go home and get it, and then you come in here, and now Johnny's sitting here, and he's refusing to do his work. You know what, Johnny? Get the work done. Come on now. You can do this. You got to focus. Well, Johnny, hold up. It's not me. It's calm down. But being able to know when it's you. This is this idea of emotional intelligence. Being able to check in with you, which connects to the next piece, relationship management. How do you manage relationship? How do you manage those relationships? Using awareness of other person's emotions to choose what to say or do in order to positively direct your behavior. So, let's say Johnny doesn't have his work that day. Well, I'm good. I'm in a good space. Johnny, what's going on? You don't have your pencil today. Johnny, yeah, I didn't have one. So on and so on, whatever the case may be. Many times we don't want to know. What we think about is Johnny is not prepared. That's the first thing that comes to our mind. So now we have to figure out, what can I do to help Johnny in this moment? Yes, I have a classroom of 25 students, but in this moment, there's a possibility that Johnny needs me. Johnny doesn't have a pencil. Johnny doesn't have paper. I've already told John, so because many times, if the case is not just one thing they don't have a pencil, they don't have a paper, they won't stay sitting down, they're getting up, they want to use the bathroom, they want to do all of these things, and it's like, what is going on? But and so sometimes that'll result in a detention for distracting other people in the classroom. So there's a consequence that's usually attached to that. And if we sometimes, and I'm not saying that consequences shouldn't happen, I think the consequences should happen, but I think we have to take into account other things that connect to that. And so even at my school, many times our dean of discipline, he'll bring students in because they have some behaviors, and I'll get a call to say, hey, I really want you to check in with him first. Before I send him home for a suspension, before he gets detention, can you just check in? I think something is happening, and he'll say, his words, it's not my pay grade. So he shifts it over to me. I said, all right, I'll check in with him. I'll call him down and we'll see what's going on with him, just so that we can see that if I'm sending them home, then we're okay with sending them home. We also have had to make the decision that it's not best for this student to have an in-home suspension. We're going to do an in-school suspension. Because sending them home, we know that the food is lacking. We know that there's going to be no supervision, so he'll just watch TV today. So if we just have him in school, we know the rule is if you do that, you should send him home. But also, that's that other piece, taking in yourself and saying, yes, we know what the rules are, but sometimes you have to step outside of that and say, hey, it's not a good idea to send Johnny home. It's just not today. We can send home some other days, but not today. And so we make a decision to leave Johnny in school. and he'll be with the dean of students all day, and he'll get some work done, and it's more productive than sending him home and letting him watch TV all day and or not eat or whatever the cases may be. Because we've taken the time to care enough for that person and that's the empathetic piece, and caring enough, putting ourselves in that situation and saying, you know what, you're right, we're gonna do something different. But if he would just, if we can't get around it, we can't get around it. You gotta send them home. You gotta send them out your class. You can't keep everybody in your class that's a distraction. You just can't. But just know that you're taking everything into consideration before you make the final decision. That's kind of the goal of this. So I found this. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but this was really powerful. And a kid said, I woke myself up because we ain't got an alarm clock. Dug in the dirty clothes basket, because ain't nobody washed my uniform. Brushed my hair and teeth in the dark, because the lights ain't on. Even got my baby sister ready, because my mama wasn't home. Got us both to school on time to eat us a good breakfast. Then when I got to class, the teacher fussed, because I ain't got a pencil. Thoughts? But how honest? So let's take it back. We don't know his backstory. We don't know he did all these things. But the first thing is, like he said, because I ain't got a pencil. So now I'm in detention. You know how hard I worked to get here this morning? Do you know how much work went into me getting here this morning? But my question: how many people honest? And this is us trying to figure it out. Our own emotional intelligence. How many people take any of that into consideration when they see a child that's unprepared in school first? Right. That's often what happens. That's the hardest thing, to step outside of me and figure out Johnny's situation. And it could be as simple as, I know sometimes supplies are low. Johnny don't have people. Here, Johnny. Go ahead. And if Johnny gets started working, then we good. But first thing, like, Johnny, you don't have a pencil? Well, you're not prepared. You didn't come to school prepared. And so it turns into this. And I'm sure his mind thinking, you know what I went through to get here? That's a lot. Go ahead.
I'm wondering in your school if there's time to do, I guess a child study. What we would do is we would discuss these contributing factors that may lead to, a child's lack of preparation for the class. So teachers who work with that student are all on board with the circumstances happening at home, whether they be, there's a shift in, where they're living, or there's a shift in the parent's job that impact the child's, readiness for school. Does that take place with yourself and other administrators and the team of teachers who work with the children?
Yes. So at my school, we actually have something that I find that's unique that I like. So the way my school is set up, we have a work program. So all of our students go to work. That's what pays their school tuition. So they all go to school one day a week. So like on Mondays, our sophomores go to work. But Mondays, there's also a sophomore team meeting. And so all the sophomore teachers, because there's no sophomores in the building, all the sophomore team teachers and myself, we come together and talk about what academic issues are happening and if there's any social emotional issues that are happening. And that way we can check in. And if a student has come to my office, or they may say, well, I'm going to refer them to you so you can check in with them. Or if they're already seeing me, I may give them an update. Hey, I can't tell you everything that's going on, but I would like you guys just to kind of work with her a little bit, work with him a little bit. We've had situations where parents haven't been the best support system, and we'll share that in the meeting. And we'll say, listen, if you call his mother, she's going to be just as much of a boom, 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 boom on him as we are, and it's not going to be effective. How about we sometimes come up with things inside of the building that will help with the behavior of the child, whatever the case may be. We try to come up with those things inside of the building so that we won't have to go to a parent who we know is not supportive. Because we all know that we have parents who you can't reach, or their child is always right, or whatever the case may be. So we find ways to get around it. So yes, we do meet, and we also send out an email. There are teachers who will say, hey, Melissa came to my 4th period class and she was crying. Or my 2nd period class and she was crying. She went to the bathroom, she came back, she still didn't look good. Just a heads up to all of the 10th grade teachers. So that way, everybody knows that they're walking into something. She could be fine by the time she gets to her next period. But just in case she's not, hey, this is a heads up. This is what happened. This went on this morning, or whatever the case may be. You know, we had a kid who was having back and forth court cases. Hey, I said, she's gonna be having a rough day today. Today's not the best day. You know, please make sure she gets her work, but we'll, you know, if we have to work on how to make it up, we'll do that. So it's just this idea of being able to care about them in a way that takes ourselves in a sense of, like I said, we got a job to do. We have test scores to meet. We have all of those things. We get that. But then how are you prepared to be what someone else needs? So it's like this whole piece of being whole all the way. So I check in with myself. That way when I get to school, because I'm working with these kids, I can check in with them. And then, so it kind of all goes hand in hand. We all working together. So like an example being, what are some of the, what people got in the scenario? Do we feel like it was handled properly? What are some thoughts?
My first question was, how old is the student? Because I don't think there was context for that, so, and then like, was there a procedure already established for entering the classroom? And that you probably come up with more compassionate ways than what.
Okay, and I think that even in this situation, it could be any age student. It could be just because they're coming and they're doing something different, but it may be against what the school policy is. And if that, or your classroom management policy is, so to speak. So in that case, if you had to think about yourself and this was your classroom management policy, how would you have handled this situation? So that's kind of the thought. What are some other thoughts?
Sometimes I would send my students just on a random errand that I really didn't need run.
Okay.
Go up to the office and get us some pencils or whatever, just so they could get out of the room, walk and breathe and kind of reset themselves.
Right, taking a minute.
I just said kind of yes and no. Like if you have some kind of standard in place as far as how you conduct yourself in the classroom, like, you know, if you say something to her and she's disrespectful back, I mean, you do have something that you want the kids to follow. But on the same token, like, you know the girl's upset, so why would you keep bugging her, telling her, or asking her? And I just said I'd like offer help or give her like an out, kind of like running the errand, and then kind of give her space.
Okay. All right.
I was gonna say, like, if she's just angry but she's not causing a disruption, I would just tend to ignore her for a little bit and just let her be, and then find a time when this class was doing something to just quietly go up to her and ask if I could be helpful, or ask her to, like, can you meet me halfway here? Can you try to get something out of class even though I can see you're angry? You know?
Okay. Those are good options.
I mean, I was just sort of going to say what Tom was saying. If she didn't, you know, obviously she doesn't want to talk about it, which is fine. I don't need to know everything that's going on. But, you know, if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, kind of, you know, is there something that we can do if we work together to get you to sort of set that aside for a little while and try to get something before? If there's some way to help without having to talk about it, let me know. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much, like, I have similar ideas, but, I just said that asking what's wrong doesn't exactly acknowledge that something is wrong, so it's missing that piece, and sometimes if you just acknowledge that they're feeling a certain way, it almost, not alleviates the situation, but makes the situation a little bit easier to handle. And I said the same thing, like, give them an out, give them a break, have them get a drink of water, but just acknowledge that something's wrong even if you don't wanna talk about it.
I work with very young students, and so we can just drop everything and talk about it. I mean, I have a teaching partner that's in the classroom, so if I need to work with a student, I can ask, definitely validating that there's some sort of shift in her feelings, and ask what I can do to fill her bucket. We have a kind of a program in our seminars. Filling the bucket is really important. I say, what can I do to fill your bucket? I understand, I see your face, I see your arms, what can I do? But I'm, of course, talking to a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old. Or find time at another time if we're transitioning. I say, I just validation.
Yeah. And so that's the important part of knowing yourself. And so all these were good ideas. But oftentimes there are times that this doesn't go that way. Let's be honest. When we're in the classroom and it's a disruption, and then, like you said, you don't want the other kids to think that I'm allowing her to get away with something that it shouldn't be happening in the moment. And so I think that it's a case by case basis. And that's that idea of, yes, there are rules. Yes, there are things in place. But sometimes we have to take a step back and tweak it a little bit and say, hey, if this were me, If I was sitting here and I felt bad and I had my head down, what would I want someone to do for me? Would I want someone to say to me, come on now, put your head up. You've had your head down long enough. We're ready to get started. You know, I'm not doing, just leave me alone. I'm not doing well. Okay. All right, well, I'll be back in a few minutes. Come on. All right, well, you're going to have to get out of my class if you're not doing that. If you're not going to follow what we're doing today in class, you got to go. And sometimes that's also, that's the piece, it's twofold to that, because it also could be our personal thing. We don't like to be disrespected. That's disrespectful to me. And because you disrespected me, I have to let you know, one thing that we lose is you are in control. You do have power. Even giving someone options keeps you in control. So to not think that you're losing control in your classroom if something doesn't happen the way you think it should in that moment. You're not losing control because you said, you know what, you gave her the option. You know what, I'm going to let you sit there and we'll talk about it after class. So you still remain in control of your class. She didn't take anything different. The kids saw you have some compassion for someone else in the class. That doesn't mean tomorrow Lucy's going to come in and say, you know, I'm having a bad day. No, Lucy actually might come in and, or someone may come in and say, you know what, Mr. Adams, he's cool. No, yesterday she was mad, this is what he did. So it's this idea to connect with someone and take that opportunity as a good thing as opposed to this turning out something negative. So she slammed the door once she left the classroom. Now she's making a scene and all that. And I would even address it the next day, even if I had to. Sometimes you got to take that. You got to come and say, yes, you know what, yesterday I should have just let someone have it. So just because she slammed the door and she didn't get its attention doesn't mean I'm not going to give you detentions in the future. It just means that I took a moment and I thought about it, and then we could have both done something different in that moment. Then the kid realizes you're human, we can work together, things happen, but you still are the power person in the class. You've controlled your classroom, you said you got it, but then you took some time, and you worried about me emotionally, where do I stand in this situation? How do I make the situation what I want it to be? Am I good? Can I move forward? So just taking those things in, that's one of the things that you want to take in that's very, very important. Also, I found that what we're talking about, how does your mood connect to your actions? When we're in a positive mood, people like us better, and friendship, love, and coalitions are more likely to submit. In contrast to the constrictions of negative emotion, our mental state is expansive, tolerant, and creative. We are open to new ideas and new experiences. That is very true. When you're not in a good mood or you're walking around, that's why I said the importance of checking in with somebody else and asking, hey, am I good today? Because people aren't even wanting to sit near me today. And, you know, we got to check in with those things to ourselves. Our own well-being, our full selves, are just as important as making sure that our kids take care. Because we can't take care of somebody when we're not well. We have to make sure that we're well and we're good. We also have childhood things. We have our own triggers that we have to take into consideration. So people I know that, you know, like even with mindfulness, everybody says, you know, you have to be in the moment, you don't worry about the past, but also understand that your past sometimes does dictate your present. So let's just say, like, you know, I had to realize with myself and that growing up, I was disappointed a lot. So as an adult, when someone wouldn't call and tell me they weren't showing up, guess what would happen? I would be ticked off. When I say upset, I'm talking about like real upset, like hurt upset. But it took a while for me to realize this is your stuff. They didn't call, yes, but they didn't come up. But the way you feel is your stuff. And so now I'm owning that, and that's making me a better person. But many times people don't know that. People don't tap into that piece of them that and recognize that sometimes things from way back here affect who we are here. But the only way to get there is to work this thing out. And so all of that has to be taken into consideration. And it may come out in your students. Students can bring some of the best of us out, and they can bring some of the worst of you out. Like I've had students, some of the girls that just Miss Hope, I don't care, and walk out. And honestly, in that moment, I let them go, because in that moment we're not gonna work. Because I always tell them this, and I'm honest enough to say this. I said we're both girls, and you're giving me something, I'm gonna give you back. So the next day I'll say, hey, you know what? You know you were wrong yesterday, right? And I'll say to them, but it wasn't my time to address you. But I'm gonna let you know we're not gonna do that again. So it's still some opportunity to address, but me knowing in that moment it's not gonna go well. because it's just not. So the basic gist of this is know yourself, know who you are. Try to find all those pieces so that when you see things happening in your classroom and you see these things that could potentially be triggers of yours, you're aware of yourself, but then you're also capable of helping those kids that you work with, giving some of yourself to them because you're in a good space. So what I'm going to have you do now, which with my own teachers when I've done this training, they actually were very surprised. Everybody has a an assessment. And I want you to take a few minutes to do this because I had a lot of teachers who found themselves very low in areas that they thought that they were strong in. But you don't know until sometimes it's put to the test and then you realize, whoops, that didn't go that well. But so I want everybody to take a moment to take your little quiz, so to speak, and check in with yourself a little bit.
It's almost not, it's almost like not just, it looks like it's not just controlling your outward reactions, but controlling your internal reactions as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, all my self ones were lower than the other three. So like self-awareness all the way down. So I guess I have some soul searching to do.
But it's not a bad thing to take a look at this and
Yeah,
just
I
kind
was
of
just
see
saying
where
that
you
part.
stand. Because it makes a difference. We work with people. We're in a working profession where other people see us and view us. And so what we are least aware of within ourselves, other people can actually see. And so sometimes just taking a moment and saying, well, what to reflect on what is it I see in me? Like doing this, whoa, I'm real low in this area. And so I had a teacher say to me one time, I couldn't believe my school on empathy was that low. So I think I'm a pretty empathetic person. But when she kind of did the look at it, and when you kind of look at a full reflection, like okay, because I think in turn, like we talked about it later, and she said that she still, even though she's empathetic, she still has expectations sometimes that can be unreasonable. So then the empathy really isn't what you thought it was. So you can say, I thought I was doing the best thing for someone, but you still had at the end of the day, you had a goal. So then it takes away from a genuine empathy that should exist.
So I have a question, sort of on the self-control aspect also. So I'm looking at number 3, and it says, let go of problems, anger, things like that. So I know letting go is not the same thing as forgetting, but for me, like, it's really hard to consciously forget something. To forget on purpose, right? So for something like that, like letting go, like let's say you want to let go of something, but you just feel like how you can't, like it's, you know what I mean? Like, are there some kind of, how do you work on something like that, I guess is what I'm saying.
And that's a lot of self-reflection. That's realizing, being able to recognize, like I said, with the same thing with me in disappointment. It happened so much that it started to affect me in my life. And you have to know when it's affecting you in your life. And that's when you know you have to work on it. So it's like, yeah, somebody did this to me, they did that, and I want to let it go, but I shouldn't have to let it go. But then how healthy will it make you to let it go? You really have to take and check in with yourself and say that. So sometimes, we won't forget things. You don't forget things. But if you carry them, they become this load and they build. You only build on them if you can't give yourself the room to kind of let them flow themselves out and realize that I have to continue with my life. My life has to go forward. In order for me to do that, I have to be able to let some things go. Because if you keep building on that, you're going to have a bag here, a bag here, a bag there. Well, you're going to be down here, you're going to be somewhere gone because you're just picking up everything as you go. So it's not always easy to let things go, but it's a process. And if you're willing to go through the process, then you create a healthier you. Any other thoughts? The next slide is just this question.
So, like, I've always known about myself that I could embrace change better. Like, the thought of moving from one neighborhood to another with apartments freaks me out a little bit. And so what was interesting is that came up in the self-confidence section. And I've never really sort of thought of it like that, but it's like if you're confident, change will work out. And a lot of times for the better. So I think that's sort of the next step.
Good. See, and you got something from it. And interesting enough, I didn't say this earlier, but to stand up in front of people and talk like this is the biggest anxiety I had. The biggest. And so I literally, if I'm in a meeting forum, I can sit down and I can talk and I can advocate for my kids and I can do all those things. But when I have to sit and stand up and talk, it's like, I think I'm almost probably halfway dead most of the time. Like there's a lot of things that happen. And so, so when I started working at the school that I'm at now, the third day there, he has me on the agenda to speak to our new 150 class. You're on. And I'm thinking, it is in my mind because I'm like, I'm not ready for this. And so, and then there's a parent meeting a couple of days later. But you'll be okay. So even now, on my way here, he's like, you'll be fine. It's okay. He said, I can't believe that you have anxiety over this. So he still does, my principal still does this. But, and people know, like people have sent me texts today and said, you'll be okay. It's okay. Just breathe. Because I just don't I don't know how I can connect to the anxiety just always gets over me. And so that I'm aware now, but it's a process of being aware of something and trying to push through it and work past it.
There's a book called Blind Spot. I'm not sure if folks are aware. I could pull up the author of Blind Spot. It talks about hidden biases that we have, that good intended people have that you're not even aware of. And as a school, we read it over the summer and have had a few professional development days around discussing aspects of that book that will help to grow us. And also Harvard has that survey or study that you can do. It's you go online and you view images and you can pick the category that you would like to see if you have a bias against a certain group of people, a gender, and you would go through the process and it will really reveal. So when I was thinking about how I answered, or I guess the outcome of this, I went to those two places. So those are great resources to help grow me with the self-reflecting piece that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that it's important, and I wrote that down so that I can take it in, especially for some of, like I said, we do this training with our teachers, and I have teachers who come back and say, you know what, I never thought about this. I'm so glad you did this. Because people don't, the one thing that we don't do is, like I said, our first question is, how are kids prepared for school? How do we prepare for school? And everything was about someone else and what they did and how we got out the door, but nothing was really being ready for this. And when you walk into a classroom, you have to really be ready for this, because we know that it can go any way at any time. And so my goal is just to make people take some time to do some self-awareness, some checking in with me. And I guess, I don't know if this helps you guys understand how this could be just as important as academic intelligence. Like, yeah, you can be smart, but if you can't connect with people, if you can't check in with yourself, if you're snappy, if you're having those moments, then, or if you can't be wrong, then, and that's a whole different thing, that some people don't know that they're wrong, and they can't be wrong. Like, it can't be me, it's gotta be them, it's gotta be her, this is working with your colleague, this is all of those things, because it happens, and so we have to definitely take all of that into consideration. Any more thoughts, questions? All right then.
Thank you.
Is it hot in here? Didn't know if that was me again. That anxiety taking over. I know they're having another session right in here after.
Oh, you were there? Oh, were you there?
Yeah, thank you.